So tonight, one of my favorite presenters is back. Elle is going to walk us through a presentation on preparing for situations like natural disasters or other emergencies where you may need to rely on your own preparations or work together with your neighbors to get through it. Situations like, what if a natural disaster strikes and FEMA never shows up? What if a general strike means you need to lean on your neighbors to get by? This workshop is part practical preparation and part mental health support, because being ready for the worst doesn't mean panicking about it. Take it away.
Hi. Okay. Hi, everybody. So, I'm just going to share my presentation. And then I guess a little plug here is that if anybody in the Denver area would like to come to, this is kind of a condensed webinar version. It's a little bit more activist oriented than the full 3 hour workshop, but I do teach this as a 3 hour workshop, and there's actually one coming up at Off the Bottle Refill Shop this Sunday, so the 5th. And then I have another one coming up this summer in Golden, Colorado. And then another one later in the summer online. And again, those would all be the full 3 hour workshops. And if as you're watching this, you are thinking to yourself, like, I have a group I would really want to share this information with, you can feel free to reach out to me after. Tiffany can provide my contact information. And I'll share a link at the end of this for my website as well, which is dedicated to this workshop. So, with all that out of the way, let's dive in. Where's my little... There we go. Oh, and also, Tiffany, this is sharing, right?
Yes, I see it.
Everything's good? Okay,
Yep.
cool. So, we have a lot to get through tonight. So, our learning objectives for the evening are that we're going to learn how emergency preparedness relates to our current political moment. We're going to learn how to prepare with an all hazards approach. We're also going to understand the areas of preparedness that are most applicable to activism and community protection. And that's going to include the basic components of an evacuation bag and evacuation planning, and then also understanding PACE communication plans and how that applies to reporting ICE activity. And then at the end, we're going to start our emergency preparedness planning process. We're just going to kind of gauge how much time we have for actual discussion at the end, but I will give you guys some worksheets for planning, and we'll make sure that everybody has access to that and can download that. So, first up, Preparedness 101. So, why should we be working to be more resilient? So, two big things right now in our current political moment. The first being economic instability. We are seeing continued job loss due to federal layoffs or tariffs, hardship due to strikes or boycotts, and then we're also seeing supply chain issues, inflation, and rising or fluctuating prices due to international conflict, tariffs, or resource shortages due to climate instability. We are also seeing shifts in policy and state violence. So there are fewer federal dollars that are being allocated to emergency and disaster response, and that may decrease the speed and efficiency of emergency services like FEMA, especially those big federal ones. But this is also trickling down to state and local preparedness agencies as well. We're also seeing increased state violence and escalation from ICE, and that's going to require coordinated community responses to protect our immigrant neighbors. And then finally, we are seeing greater social unrest or increased police presence, and that is preventing some people from leaving their homes. And ICE presence as well is preventing that, especially in areas where there's increased raids and all of that. So, An all hazards approach for preparedness means that instead of focusing on specific scenarios and getting caught up in kind of the specifics of what might happen, we are just going to focus on our capacities and our capabilities, not planning for every potential emergency scenario. So we're going to prepare for three different time frames of 3 days, 3 weeks, and 3 months. And then we're going to focus on 12 areas of preparedness because these are just basic things that every human being needs in every scenario. So the idea is if you prepare for these three time frames and prepare with these essential basic needs, that you do not actually have to worry about the specific scenario. You can just utilize these backup plans for anything that might come your way. So the areas of preparedness that we're going to focus on are shelter, clothing, and then I also split this out into the worksheets of having an extra area that is like fire, heating, cooling, so like AC, backup plans for AC. Water is another one, food, hygiene and sanitation, light and power, first aid and medical supplies, communication planning, safety and security planning, tools and personal items. That's kind of like, I think of it as my junk drawer, like things that don't really neatly fit into other categories. We're also going to talk about cooking, important documents and money, and then transportation and navigation. So those are our essential areas of preparedness. So next I want to just talk a little bit about the areas of preparedness that are relevant, especially to areas of preparedness for our current political moment. When we're thinking about going to protests, we're going to want to like bolster our first aid preparedness. That is relevant for protests, for Ice Watch, supply chain issues that affect medical supplies, and then even reduce staffing or funding for healthcare systems, because obviously we're seeing a lot of healthcare related federal dollars being cut. We also want to have a better backup plan for our communication systems and our transportation and navigation systems. So this is relevant for protests, for Ice Watch, internet outages, phone service outages, or for times when you need to leave your phone at home, like at a protest. Communication planning for protests should also include having contact numbers for friends, family, and lawyers if arrests are possible. Food and water backup systems are relevant for building some economic resilience, and some resilience to supply chain issues or fluctuating grocery costs. Obviously, with the conflict in Iran, we're seeing some increased fuel prices, which trickle down into our food supplies as well. Important documents and money. This is especially relevant if you are somebody who like might have issue like run-ins with ICE, needing to prove citizenship. So like having those all in order. And then finally, safety and security. And that is for remaining safe and secure during times of social unrest or increased ICE presence. Mm, there we go. Okay. All right. So going back to our three time frames, first we're going to talk about 3 bad days. So these are acute events. So examples of acute scenarios could be preparing a backpack for a protest. It could look like preparing shelter and clothing for overnight demonstrations like encampments. Also, this includes having home evacuation plans and a clear plan for when evacuation is the safest option. That's going to also include know your rights trainings as part of your plan development. And then finally, 3 days acute events can include any sort of like infrastructure disruption. So that can be power outages, road closures, water pressure loss, any of those minor things. And those are things that we've probably all experienced before. So preparedness for those 3 days is going to involve minimal additional purchases. It really doesn't have to be perfect. Genuinely give yourself permission to be imperfect with this plan. Just ensure that you have a temporary backup plan for vital resources. And then this should also include some communication backup planning. And we're going to actually talk more about communication backup plans in a little bit here. All right, so 3 bad weeks. For 3 bad weeks, you are basically going to be hunkering down with your household members and waiting out a hairy scenario. So, some examples of 3 week scenarios would include a temporary increased ICE, police, or military presence due to social unrest or immigration raids. Um, this could also include, and this is broader than our political moment, but extended weather events that might impede travel. So, like weather events that would confine you to your home or your neighborhood. So, think like blizzards, flooding, that kind of thing. And then another kind of weather related one would be extreme temperatures that last a week or longer. So, thinking about heat waves or polar vortexes. So preparedness for this 3 weeks is going to be a little bit more intensive than that 3 day time frame. So you're going to want to shift towards more like lifestyle changes that include having approximately a month of supplies, which you rotate out. So just with myself as an example, my pantry usually stays at about a 3 to 5 week level of preparedness just because that's the amount of space that I have in my 1 bedroom. And I'm always rotating out canned goods to make sure that nothing ever expires. You're also going to want to practice using any preparedness items or gear regularly. So, again, myself as an example, a lot of my 3 week preparedness is just my regular camping gear. So, those are things that I use regularly, and I would be comfortable using them if there was some sort of infrastructure disruption. It's also going to include getting connected with your community and creating communication systems for mutual aid and for maintaining situational awareness. I know in our modern era, like it's sometimes even hard to know your neighbors, or again, I'm in an apartment. It's kind of hard to get to know your neighbors in an apartment where people are always moving, but making a conscious effort to connect to your community is very important for the moment that we're in. And then finally, just keeping in mind that your preparedness should benefit you, but also your community through mutual aid as needed. Again, calling back to the examples out of Minnesota, seeing neighbors, making sure that everybody has groceries, everybody has like the medical supplies that they need. All of that stuff is really important because there could come a time where it is dangerous for your immigrant neighbors to leave their homes, and we want to be able to support them. All right. And then finally getting into these 3 month longer time frames. And at 3 bad months, we are looking at community transformation and community resilience. Because really, the longer that an emergency drags on, the more people we need to bring in to make sure that we have all the supplies and all of the skills to make it through difficult periods. Because you, as an individual, or even you and the members of your household, are not going to have the skills all on your lonesome to be able to withstand like a 3 month or longer period of needing increased resilience. So, some examples of these 3 or more month scenarios could include a long-term increased ice presence, long-term supply chain issues or shortages. I think that we are probably going to see that with a conflict in Iran just because it is increasing fuel costs, and that is going to cause inflation kind of everywhere. So that is something that I'm thinking about, at least in my preparedness right now. Another one is economic recession, or what we're kind of going through right now of stagflation, long-term power issues or infrastructure damage, or long-term medical emergencies and outbreaks. Right now, we are seeing a lot more measles, which is really dangerous. So, again, for my preparedness, I have a much greater level of personal protective equipment that I've been using regularly because we're having a lot of communicable disease issues now that we are dismantling our public health systems. So preparedness for these types of scenarios includes, in addition to that kind of 3 week level of having those extra supplies, rotating things out, making sure things don't expire, you're also going to want to understand the skills of your community members. So your neighbors, like what do they do work for work? What skills can they provide in mutual aid? It's going to involve consistent community engagement. So things like ICE Watch, immigrant focused support networks, and direct actions. Again, this is doing another kind of lifestyle shift where, yes, we're practicing using our supplies. Yes, we're rotating things out. But we are also communicating more with the people around us. We're checking in with people more. We're making sure that we are taking steps to be more civically engaged. Um, and then I guess one final thing I will say about 3 months is that you are not really going to see huge differences between the things that you're stocking for like 3 weeks and 3 months. It's really going to more be in the quantity of supplies. And then also just being a lot more mindful and careful of that inventory management side of making sure to rotate things out. Especially with food stuff, it can be really easy to, let a bunch of cans of beans in your pantry go a little too long. So, getting into those good habits for inventory management is really important with these 3 month time frames. All right, and now we are going to get a little bit more into specifics of preparedness that is relevant to ICE and authoritarian threats. So the first thing we're going to be talking about, we're going to be going over is 72-hour evacuation planning. Again, we're thinking about this in that framework of 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. So this is your 3 day preparedness. So before you evacuate, you need these four things. You need knowledge plans, navigation planning, and then you're also going to have an evacuation bag and checklist. So within the knowledge category, we're going to want to take a Know Your Rights training, and then you are going to want to do some safety planning with people in your household of understanding when leaving your home is the safest option for you personally. That is going to include research, individual risk assessments, and individual planning. These are really conversations that you need to sit down and have with your household members. Plans. So creating a plan for where you will evacuate to, and or when you will evacuate and where you can go. So always having a point A, which is your house, and a point B, which is somewhere safe that you are going to go. And then sharing that plan with household members or people who can help you evacuate. And then navigation. So having a clear route to that point B. So where are you going and how are you going to get there? Your goal is to get to that safe point B as fast as possible with as little issues as possible. And that brings us to our final thing. Something that can really speed up getting to that point B is having a well-organized evacuation bag and an evacuation checklist. So you are going to make sure that you have a designated sturdy backpack for your 72-hour kit. And this 72-hour kit can also be something that you bring with yourself to a protest or anything like that. So um, there's kind of two categories of things though here. We have some non-perishables, like clothes and backup shelters might go in our bag. And then we're also going to have a checklist for items that you need in your daily life. So that's like documents, IDs, or anything perishable. So food or anything like that. And that's going to be on that checklist. So your 72-hour bag should contain an inventory sheet of the bag contents and inventory sheet with the bag contents. And then you're also going to have those checklist items. For myself, I have them in a plastic sheet protector that is attached to the outside of my 72-hour bag. Your 72-hour bag should also include some backup shelter and clothing. So mine has an emergency blanket, a rain poncho, a pair of work gloves, a change of clothes, and a garbage bag. The garbage bag is for storing like soiled or wet clothes. We're also going to have medical supplies. So a basic first aid kit, 3 pairs of medical gloves, and then a 3 to 7 supply of any required life-saving medications. I take prescription medications every night, so I have a 5-day supply in my 72-hour bag. And then also include 3 respirator masks, so N95s or KN95s, and hand sanitizer. For light and power, you're going to want to have a flashlight with batteries and a portable phone charger, just one of those little bricks in case your phone runs out while you're out. You can have that as a backup. And then finally, for communication backup planning, you're going to want to have an AM/FM emergency radio with batteries. Mine also has a little solar power and a crank charger. And then you're also going to want to have a list of emergency contact phone numbers, including out-of-state contacts, and also ideally including some sort of like lawyer or legal service that you can access when you need to. And then also a whistle, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about why we might want to whistle in a second. All right, so our 72-hour evacuation checklist. So food and water for 3 days. If you want to leave that in the bag at all times, you can. I personally don't because those are perishables, which for y'all who don't know, water can actually also be a perishable because some plastic containers will start to leach into the water. So keep that in mind for your water storage. It is perishable. And then food, again, that can be perishable. So my 72-hour bag does not include them. For documents and money, you are going to want to have any sort of medical forms that you need a backup of, identification, any insurance cards, and then emergency cash. Um, you can also include personal items on this checklist. So I will be so real with you guys. I sleep with a stuffed rabbit every single night, and she is on my checklist because that is a comfort item for me. That is important for me, and if I evacuated, I really would like to take her with me. And then also just being mindful of either keeping sturdy shoes in your evacuation bag, or just being sure to put that on your checklist of you are leaving in sturdy shoes. All right. So now we are going to get into some specifics of communication planning for ICE reporting and community safety. This is something that is kind of in that 3 week and 3 month level of preparedness. So the preparation piece. So knowing your rights, knowing how to film and report ICE activity. You can take or watch a recorded Know Your Rights training, or take a training about identifying, recording, and reporting ICE. I took a great training from an organization called States at the Core, where they went all over this stuff with us, including like the type of garments that ICE usually wears, what vehicles they usually drive. So definitely be keeping an eye out for that. And then creating a whistle kit with some printed information. There's free whistles available from Tiffany at Solidarity Warriors. And in fact, I gave out about 50 of them earlier this year. And then we're also going to talk a little bit more about this on the next slide, but utilizing for your communication planning the PACE method. So, PACE methods of communication, basically, you are establishing 4 different modes of communication. So, your primary, which is the best method for normal communications, auxiliary, sorry, I can't talk, which is a reliable second form of communications. Contingency, which is a fallback communication if your primary and auxiliary fail. And then finally, your emergency system, which is kind of your last resort method. So applying pace to this increased ice presence. So your primary, if you live in Colorado, is going to be to call the Colorado Rapid Response Network. So that is dependent on phone service. So if you are potentially like out of phone service, that means that your primary method would be failing, but that's fine because we have 3 backup plans. Um, if you have internet access wherever you are, you should also ideally report ice sightings to a local signal group. So that is bringing us into our auxiliary. It's so hard to say tonight. I don't know what is up with me. But that is going to be the encrypted signal messaging. So Signal, which Tiffany shared a link to the Solidarity Warriors Signal, that's an encrypted messaging app. So there are local like Ice Watch, Ice reporting signal chats. You kind of typically have to go through a few different like levels of them to get to your hyper local group. But if you were to spot ice, it would be call corn and then report in those signal messaging groups. Although some local groups will only allow like an admin to post in there. But again, having those two as kind of your highest priority, like if all systems are go, those are where you would want to report that ICE activity. And then we get to our contingency plans. So if you cannot call and you cannot text to Signal, this is where you would create a backup communication system to notify local partners. So this might be your neighbors or yeah, just like other people in your area that you are able to contact even if that phone or internet service is unavailable. So again, that's going to be specific to you and who's in your community, but that could include walkie-talkies, radios, Meshtastic, that kind of stuff. So if that internet and phone service is unavailable, those backups are available. And then finally, our last one is the whistle system. So, a whistle will send basically a localized emergency alert to everybody around you. Um, and that works even if there's no cell service, even if there's no radio, even if there's no internet, you will always be able to have a whistle to alert everybody in the immediate area. So the other thing that I will add is if you have access to one of those three, and you are seeing ICE detain someone, like you can still use the whistle system to send out kind of that localized alert. But you're going to want to use your primary, and auxiliary first. So report to signal and corn. Then once all of that is done, utilizing the whistle system. Okay, and then this is kind of a little preview of the worksheets you guys are about to get. So basically, the worksheets that I've made for this class, they are structured with each of those areas of preparedness that we talked about in the beginning, and then little questions for like different parts of that area of preparedness. So, and then it's broken out into the 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. So, in this example, in the event of ice activity, how would you report ice activity? And you can see that as we get into the 3 month and 3 week ones, our our systems, like our backup communications, are a little bit more robust, require a little bit more training and effort from us. And the kind of 3 day level of preparedness is stuff that we can do pretty quickly. Because again, the intention of the 3 day level of preparedness is just to get some stuff done, some easy wins, so you can be just a little bit more prepared, and then putting additional time and resources into those longer time frames once you are at a 3 day level of preparedness. All right, so now we are going to download these worksheets. So we're going to have just a little bit of a like closing reflection. I'm going to put this up on the screen. Some closing reflections. This is just going to be something that you write down, jot it down on a piece of paper, or if you don't have paper, you can write it down in your mind. But I want you guys to think about who is one person that you are going to talk to, either in your community or your household, to improve community preparedness. So think it or write it or whatever. And then make a plan for yourself of like, when are you going to get a hold of them and talk to them? I have my person in my brain. And then here's just some closing resources for you guys. So we have, and all these links like will go out. Tiffany will send these out as well. But the first link is some emergency preparedness for immigrants from the Immigrant Defense Project. Information about protesting safety rights and what to bring to protests. I also have linked a Know Your Rights webinar that's just recorded from another like presenter. An Ice Watch training that is the States at the Core Ice Watch training, their Substack. So they basically announce like when they're going to do another training. I've taken that one. It was really, really good. Highly recommend. The next link is some QR codes for local signal groups for Denver. And then Solidarity Warriors, aka Tiffany, has Know Your Rights cards, whistle kit resources on their website. Um, I made some ice reporting pocket guides, so they fit in your wallet. It's one sheet of paper. And that has like all of the information that you need to gather to report, the code for like how to blow whistles to mean different things, the core number, and
Ooh.
then some recording guidelines. And then the Colorado Rapid Response Network website is there. And then finally, the Bread and Roses legal line. And then I will also say that the in the worksheets that I gave you guys to download, the contact information for the Colorado Rapid Response Network and Bread and Roses are in. There's a little tab that says like contact sheet. So they'll be in there kind of preloaded for you guys. Um, so I really hope that all of that was helpful. I know I threw a lot of information at you in a really short amount of time. But I would love to take questions if anybody has them. And then if anybody is having like technical issues, I can hang on after 7:30 and help people. Um, I
Real quick,
think, yeah.
I just want to say we don't have whistles on our website
Oh,
anymore.
anymore? Okay.
We do have red cards and the ice is not welcome here window clings. But the whistles, I will put the email address that you should email. It's
Thank
another
you.
organization that will ship them to you.
How
Okay,
long
go
have
for it.
you been doing preparedness education and what got you interested in this topic?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been an educator in like various settings for like 6 years now. But my last 2 years of like professional work experience, I worked at the Colorado State Health Department doing training and exercise for the Office of Emergency Preparedness and Response. So that is kind of some of my formal um, preparedness training experience. And then prior to that, I worked in public health in rural Montana and was part of their COVID response. So a component of my job during that was doing training for staff. Basically for different like software systems that we were using for pandemic management. Um, and I also kind of I wore a lot of different hats in rural public health just because it was such a small department. But yeah, I did a lot of kind of different, did some like youth development programming too. But yeah, so 4 years of public health and emergency management, 2 of those years being training and exercise. And then this workshop I developed a year ago and have been teaching it ever since. Sometimes partnering with like climate focused organizations and doing work with them, or just teaching it independently. And yeah, I always try and like partner with different organizations so that I can reach different like communities of people. So yeah, so that was my experience with that. Thanks for asking.
Okay, another one is I'm wondering if you think about pets in your planning.
Yes. So, I have a little freak of a cat named Carol. And I do some preparedness for her. Um, Generally, what that looks like is just having extra pet food in my pantry. Ideally, also having like extra litter. Sometimes I'm not so great about that just because she goes through it quite quickly, as they are wont to do. But yeah, it's the same principles of stuff. It is just stocking additional supplies, rotating them out. Yeah, for Carol, it's mostly just having like a really big bag of extra kibble, an extra like flat of wet food. Um and yeah, so she is also prepared. Oh, I actually will say one other thing. This is cool. If you have horses in the state of Colorado and in California, there is actually a ride sharing app for evacuating horses. So if you are a horse owner, I can find that link and I'll give it to Tiffany to send out after. But yeah, if anybody is living in wildfire states and potentially needs to evacuate horses, I'll give you guys some resources for that.
Question came up in a breakout room. Should you take copies of important documents or do you need the originals?
Hmm. I guess what like context or like is that evacuating your home or
So
like
it came up in the context of the 3-day go bag, where you would have important documents that you would need. Is it your birth certificate? Is it the deed to your house? Is it your will? What documents
what
would you
documents?
need, and would you need an original versus, like a copy of your birth certificate? Would
Yeah.
that be sufficient?
So I can't speak on what is correct for like every single situation. I can definitely try and find resources for that, but I can also say like my personal preparedness for that is that like any sort of like important identifying documents if I were to evacuate my home. Like my plan is to take those because my evacuation plan is also like for wildfire because we live in a state that's always on fire. So I just keep like my important documents in like one central. I have like a safe that I just keep them in, and it is part of my evacuation checklist to like throw that in my car. And it has like my original copies of like my birth certificate. It has my passport. It has a few like deeds to things. And yeah, just other stuff like that. I kind of keep it in there. And some photos and stuff. It's a fireplace or a fireproof safe. So hypothetically, if I wasn't able to get to my home and it burned down, I would at least have some pictures and my passport left, which would be nice. And yeah, so that's what my preparedness for that looks like. It's really nothing fancy. But again, it's going to depend on what you need specifically. Honestly, I have some friends right now that are literally carrying their passports with them everywhere that they go in case they're stopped by ICE. And that's kind of a personal risk assessment that you have to make. But I can definitely try and find some resources about like what are the most important documents to have. And I think that actually might be in that preparedness for immigrants link that I gave at the end.
That's similar to the conclusion that we came to, but if you've got all of your important documents in a bag in your safe, you're going to grab it and go.
Yes.
Originals or copies, you're going to bring them with you.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the conclusion that we came to that,
Yeah, and I would just say again, like the evacuation planning and evacuation bag, the goal is not necessarily to have like everything in one single bag, but just having things in centralized locations where you're like, I can grab this, I can grab this, I can wrangle my cat into a crate and drag her screaming into my car. All the important stuff. Having my documents in a secure location means that I can have more time for cat wrangling. So, all right. Do we have any more questions from the chat or should I get into the raised hands?
What about bikes and scooters?
Bikes and scooters are a great backup transportation plan. I have kind of a network of friends here, and not all of them have cars. So our evacuation planning also includes like the people who have cars are responsible for like making sure that they have, like an atlas in the glove box, jumper cables, like tire repair kit, I personally have a shovel in my car for digging it out because it's a very low car. And then the friends that are around me that do not have a car, they have some sort of other backup transportation, so like a bike or a scooter to get to my house so that we can all get in my car, and leave in case of wildfire.
I'm gonna go ahead and call on Aaron.
Hey, that was awesome. I really appreciate it. You know what you're talking about. I've got a go bag, I definitely suggest Life Straws from Jimmy Carter's Foundation.
Yes, life
They Yeah,
straws.
one straw will last one person for 5 years, and you can put it into a disgusting puddle of water, and that'll cut down on the weight of your backpack. You really need to think about the weight that you're carrying. Are you walking? Are you in a car? Are you going to get on a bus? Like, you gotta take that around. So I just want to
Yeah.
remind people that, like, this is amazing, but like, we got 140 million Americans that are in emergency right now, and they can't make something like this. So could you give some ideas? I was thinking, like, stuff to stay warm, stuff to stay dry, lighters, a life straw, something that, is attainable. And then,
Mhm.
if you are really poor like me and you haven't spent your life making this go bag, watch Naked and Afraid.
Naked
Uh,
and afraid. I
yeah.
try and stay clothed and afraid, actually. That's my preference, but
And Jeffrey, I just wanted to tell you, buddy, Tiffany and I are gonna stay on with you after this call, so you can lower your hand if you'd like.
One of the things I would say, particularly if you're worried about something to keep you warm, something to keep you dry, something to decrease the amount of weight that you need to do, one of the things I learned from a car podcast is the incredible use of a tarp.
yep. Just the
You
good
know,
old tarp. And I actually have, this is a bit of an aside, but like there are emergency blankets as well, which are very lightweight. The only kind of caveat there is they will reflect your heat back to you with like it's like 99% of your heat gets reflected back to you, but that said, they're very thin, so it's kind of a situation where, like, if you are stranded in the cold woods, like sitting on the cold ground, an emergency blanket is not going to help you with the cold on your butt, but it will keep the cold, or like it will reflect your own heat back to you, so you're like losing less heat. But again, if you're sitting on something cold or laying on something wet, it's not as helpful. But yeah, the space blankets are great. I have one of them in my first aid kit. I have like I've taken this course called Stop the Bleed, which is how to stop like severe bleeding and hemorrhaging. And so I have an emergency blanket in that kit because it's good for like preventing somebody from going into shock after massive blood loss. So, and that's another great training for anybody who's looking for some more like robust first aid skills. Okay, are there any other questions?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it, Jeffrey.
Two questions. What was the point of all this, and does it affect people outside of Colorado?
Yeah, so does it affect people outside of Colorado? Definitely. This workshop I developed, it's not really specific to one geographic area, although for this one I did include some resources that are specific to Colorado since this is a Denver-based group. And then the point is just to give people who are new to emergency preparedness some really good like starting points and a foundation to kind of like start their preparedness journey. It's not something that happens overnight. And it's also not something that has to be particularly stressful or scary. I developed this because I think a lot of people don't really know where to start with emergency preparedness, or it feels really intimidating. So this is just taking like my knowledge of public health and emergency preparedness and education and turning it into something that is hopefully like digestible and approachable and accessible for people. So that's my goal with it. Thanks for asking.
It
I
is
hope
I would
that
all of
add
explains
those
it.
things.
I would add to that that a lot of this comes from the potential for society to break down and the potential for the government to come knocking on your door and trying to, take you, and being prepared in that eventuality to leave your house quickly if it becomes necessary to do it. And those are very real concerns. And I said this, being a forward facing activist, I could very easily see myself winding up on a list of somebody that the administration wants to disappear, and being prepared to leave at a moment's notice and be able to do that is very important for my peace of mind. And I can see where things will get worse before they get better for more people. And being prepared in that worst case scenario is what this is all about.
Morgan,
It's tough.
we'll be roommates in CCOT. Don't worry, we'll keep each other hopeful.
There you go.
Excuse me, I said create a point B, not a point C. Okay.
Aaron, I want the top bunk.
Any other questions out there?
There was
All
one
right.
about
Oh,
gas masks would be the best for tear gas.
Yeah, so that's a really good question, honestly. I do have a gas mask. I would say with regards to the best one for tear gas, my understanding, and this, I am not a gas mask expert and I will not pretend to be, but I do have one. And my understanding is that gas masks that are made like specifically for keeping like chemical, like tear gas and stuff out are not, to my understanding, available for civilians. Maybe I am incorrect about that. Again, not a gas mask expert. Um, but yeah, I just have one that is like NIOSH approved, OSHA approved kind of thing that is just for um basically
Vegan
like
one.
working in a what? Somebody said something? But yeah, it's for like the one that I have is like for working in a shop basically. So like keeping spray paint and like airborne hazardous materials and like dust and stuff out. It has like an N95 like filter system. But yeah, with regards to ones that are specifically good for tear gas, I don't know. I've tried to figure it out and I'm still not totally sure. So, wish I had a better answer, but I'm not an expert on gas masks.
And, I think that's one of the things that you need to figure out, is this important for me? The two scenarios in which you're going to need a gas mask are going to be if you're in a situation where you're getting tear gassed, and if you're in a situation where there's something like a gas leak or a other form of gas that you would be exposed to, and if you are bugging out to the middle of nowhere to be away from everybody, a gas mask may not be useful for you. But if you're planning on getting into the civil unrest in the city center where the police may be shooting tear gas in the meantime, having a gas mask would be incredibly useful for you, but it may not be something that you need to take when you've got a very, very limited amount of space and weight that you can bring with you. If you're going, hundreds of miles into the woods, um, a gas mask may not be necessary.
And I guess I'll also say with regards to that, like my preparedness, everything that I do for myself is very much, again, doing all hazards, which means I'm focusing on my basic needs and getting resources for those. So my gas mask is not really specifically for tear gas. In my mind, it is also for like wildfire evacuation because really poor air quality can be a major danger, a major danger, when evacuating for wildfire. So, that is something that I would try and keep in mind. That is how I do my preparedness, is trying to really like minimize redundant purchases. I don't really buy things that are only for one specific use. So that is, I don't know, another thing to consider with anything that you buy.
Speaking of things that you are buying, if you have a bunker, buying in bulk for ramen noodles and canned soup can be a great idea. But if you're looking to leave with as little as you can, buying bulk things, bulk food, bulk toilet paper may not be the best way to go. And a lot of that is going to depend on the situation. But, just keep that in mind, depending on what you can stock up and where, how much you buy.
Yeah, and definitely start with your shortest time frame first. Start with your 3 days, then move into 3 weeks, then move into 3 months. And that, oh my gosh, Mirabai and Swan. Hi. Sorry. Some bunker not required workshop graduates and collaborators, conspirators. Hi you guys. Glad you made it. All right, are there any other questions? I know we're a little bit over time, but if there's like one, I can take like one more question.
There was
Elle,
one about what to do if you don't have a car, like resources for
Yeah, make
people
a
without
friend who
vehicles.
has a car. I'm serious. I have people who do not have cars that their car is my car for wildfire evacuation or other evacuation scenario. I Yeah, that's that community building piece. Make a friend who has a car.
and that's where having a bike with you, like I have a bike rack for the back of my car. So to throw the bike on the back of the car and go is not a bad idea because one of the scenarios we talked about is, not necessarily civil society completely breaks down, but what happens if gas is no longer available? Because I'm old enough to remember the gas shortages in the late 70s and, with the war in Iran, it's not impossible that all of a sudden the supply of gasoline will disappear. And having a bike as a backup, your car will get you 300 miles, but after that, you're on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, when you get into talking about like backup transportation systems, one of them is obviously having a friend with a car for those long distances, but for moderate distances, having a bike, helmet, um, no, sorry, I phrased that weird and it sounds like I just told you to have a bike helmet. I want you to have a bike and a helmet to wear while you're on the bike, to clarify. Um, so yeah, or whatever you're down for. I'm kind of a wimp with bikes, but I love a good roller skate. So that is my moderate distance thing.
As outing myself as somebody from the 70s, when we would go, dirt bike riding off 10-foot jumps without a helmet, If push comes to shove, I would say if you are biking out to the middle of nowhere in an emergency, I'm not going to be as concerned about the helmet as I am the bike. Let me put it that way.
Yes, but I mean, ideally you have both. Sorry,
Yes.
you invited me to talk about preparedness. You thought I wasn't going to bring up a helmet? Morgan.
All right, I deserve that.
All right, well, thank you guys so much
Also,
for
one more thing, Elle,
yeah.
if you've been to any of our other meetings, running late is par for the course.
Oh,
Nobody should
okay.
be surprised that we are a few minutes over. But before we leave, I did want to say that I am very thankful for everybody who turned out at No Kings this weekend. All of the work that they did, particularly the people in red states that have had harder times doing things where they've been in less friendly environments and had to do the extra work to turn out. Um, you know, don't think that's unseen and unappreciated. It's hard work, and it's harder work if the forces that be are actively working against you and making it more difficult, versus the places where they are somewhat sympathetic. So I just want to say I appreciate everybody who turned out, especially the people in red places that have had more work to do than the rest of us.
Okay, so I am gonna share one final link, which is just to my website. Which has upcoming events. So, like, if you want to take the full 3 hour workshop, or if you want to contact me because you liked this and you want to bring it to another group. And then, okay, sneak previews. How exciting. I've made little stickers that will soon be available on my website, which say build community, not bunkers. So, at some point they will be for sale. I'm going to link this in the chat, and then yeah, the links to like Tiffany, you can totally share like this full PowerPoint with people,
Okay.
and then
Well,
yeah.
thank you, Elle. You're amazing.
Oh,
Was
thanks for having
there,
me.
it looks like there was another question in the chat. Michelle said, do we have any safe places to meet?
The library, right? They don't know where that is.
Oh, I like that answer.
So
Huh,
real.
huh, huh.
I'm going to say it depends on your community, where you are, and where the mutual aid and other people are gathering. I would recommend it to be someplace remote and someplace where you have somebody who owns the land and would not allow authorities on it. Um, but it's going to depend on your group and your community and the people who are near you, right, El?
Yeah. And I guess one other thing I'd say about that is like just be if you are gonna do any like more intensive like preparedness planning and you want those plans to stay private, um, there is the best way that you can approach that is, whatever, communicating digitally to say we're meeting at this time in this place, and then keep everything in person that you're going. If you're doing more intensive planning and you want those plans to stay truly private, the best way to do that is come up with the time and place to meet, leave your devices away from you, do that planning in person, and do not like digitize that. So that would be my recommendation for, yeah, any more intensive planning or intensive like mutual aid work that you maybe don't want a written record of. And then what was I going to say about libraries? Oh, yes. If you live in a hot, sweltering state like Colorado, please locate your local library because in the event of extreme heat. A lot of times, or not a lot of times, most times, libraries will still have their AC running. A lot of times some of them will be designated as like cooling centers for extreme heat events. So ahead of the summer, ahead of the wildfire season, please make sure you know where your local library is or another building that will be running AC even if your household AC goes out. And please get a air filter for indoors. If there's really bad smoke or air quality outside during wildfire season, you want something in your house that can at least maintain some good indoor air quality. So those are my shout outs for, I guess, Colorado summer preparedness, or otherwise hot on fire state preparedness for this summer.
I have to run, but if you're good closing things out, then I will leave it up to you.
I can stay. I want to hear what iPhone has to say, and then we can let Jeffrey play a song if he wants.
Okay. All right, everybody have a good night.
See you, Tiffany.
Okay. Yeah,
Hi, Tiffany.
this is Pat. I guess I'm
Oh, hi,
showing his
Pat.
iPhone. Anyway, yeah, so we had our protest up here in Bailey, right on the highway. And I don't know if you recall, but back on the Labor Day protest, one of the guys actually swerved off the highway at us. And so I was down at the one in Denver that day. But, so we did have extra planning here this time. We had a yellow tape up and far enough off the highway that it wasn't a problem. But there were MAGA people driving by with, flipping us off, thumbs down, coming over in the dirt towards the side. All the diesel trucks had to rev their engines and smoke us out. So that was going on. But overall, the protest was great. We had like 200 or 300 people there on the side of the highway. And with that, there was, different kind of flags around, great signs, some great hats. One guy brought a drum. So my highlight for that was he let me play it. And he was playing some songs. So he was just playing along with it. And the perfect song came on. Green Day, American Idiot. So I got to play drums with that on the side of the highway. So it was pretty good overall.
Excellent. That is very good to hear. Anybody else have protest stories that they want to talk about? What was it like in your area? One thing I did notice this time, obviously here in Colorado, we tend to have a lot of sympathetic people at our protests. Our protests tend to be pretty large. But like Stray said, I noticed more people with thumbs down, giving the finger as they were driving by at these protests than I have in previous other ones. 1,500 people in Georgia is a good turnout. One of the things that really impressed me is they were talking about all 50 states, red, blue, green area or blue areas, red areas.
I got the song.
All right, just a minute. And that's why I asked the question, because there were a lot of people in places that you wouldn't typically expect turning out. I went to a Freedom Trainers Train the Trainer last weekend or the weekend before, and there were a lot of people from Tennessee. And there were a lot of people in Tennessee that were turning out for this. And, to me, that's really encouraging, even though the numbers weren't the same, even though they weren't as big. When you start seeing it in places that you wouldn't normally expect, even if you're getting 1,500 people, even if you're getting 500 people, even if you're getting 10 people in places that nobody would come out, that's all progress and it's all building a movement. So I think it's important to show that those of us in blue states also stand in solidarity with the people in red states that like I said are having an even tougher fight with everything that's going on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I'll put this in the chat too, but please feel free to reach out to Tiffany with like any feedback or what you thought of the webinar. Always looking to update like my information and get feedback from students. So yeah, would be very grateful for that, and she will pass it along to me. And reach out to her too if you would like me to give this workshop to a group of people that you know. All right, that's it. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you so much for coming and doing
Right.
this again. We really appreciate it. So thank you all for being here, and I will see you all next week.